Alright, today we're talking about the male loneliness epidemic. We're talking about America being fried. And I don't know, just a rant. So if you're wanting to listen to a rant, then you found one. But anyway, sometimes I make motivational videos and I drop them on Mondays. I don't feel like doing that. I kind of just want to talk off the cuff because I got to be frank with y'all. I feel like to some degree, to some extent, not that there is really nothing to like motivate me anymore. Like I still have motivation for a lot of things that I want to do, and I'm sure you do too. But I think it would be wrong of me to not take time out to kind of just like analyze the landscape, like the social landscape, not only as a person who lives in this country, but also just as a human being, to just talk about some kind of shit like this. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, America is low-key fried. America is low-key fried. First of all, I don't care who you voted for. Personally, I think both parties are of the same ilk to some extent. They're all focused on not our best interest. That's first and foremost, right? I could only say so much on these platforms about said things, given the nature and the context of those things, but I'm pretty sure we're thinking the same thing when I say it. But for the most part, I find it to be particularly interesting as humans how we could put so much hope in, certain things, whether they be abstract in nature, like religion, or they be concrete constructs like politics, and yet not realize that we're constantly being fried and shafted time and time again. It's also brick as fuck, so bear with me. But yeah, no, I just find that shit to be interesting, yo. And it's so crazy to me to see how these things, whether we're conscious of them or not, kind of like reverberate throughout our life. And we see it from like every social aspect. Like when I go to the gym these days, I run into people that are just angry, bro. Like, listen, I don't know about y'all, I don't know about you guys, but you guys ever go into the gym and have like imaginary beef with someone? Or like someone has imaginary beef with you, I should say? Because to me, and this is just like a one like tangent, because to me it seems like everyone's got like an attitude these days. Like everyone's got a fucking chip on their shoulder. I mean, hey, maybe it's because I'm handsome, but nah, like everyone's got like an attitude. They've got a chip on their shoulder. I understand that everyone's going through something, but there definitely has to be something said just about the nature of how we are as human beings and how we treat each other. And if you think about it, things aren't as bad as they could potentially get, which I unfortunately think things will get worse, in my personal opinion. I mean, listen, perspective is a son of a bitch, right? But it really does depend on how you think about things, and I could see it on two fronts. Like, if you're on the upswing of this K-shaped economy, then, things will probably get better for you to some capacity, depending on where you are in the grand scheme of things. But, for those, unfortunately, the vast majority of people, shit is about to get real bad, and I just find human nature to be so interesting, because it's those same, like some of the same poor people, or whatever class you want to put them in, they kind of like voted their way in this mess, and that's the only thing I'll really say about politics. What I really just wanted to get at was how human beings just put so much hope into things that time and time again prove that they're not to be trusted. And like, if you could read between the lines, then like you're understanding what I'm saying. But moving on, I then want to move that over to the male loneliness epidemic, which really is a self-inflicted one. And I got to be completely honest about that, because I seen this video. I don't know how accurate this is, but I seen this video about how like MAGA men, or like men who identify themselves as like MAGA. As a side note, I think if you're giving yourself any label, whether that be Democratic or Republican or whatever you're saying, like, you really just come off as more like a useful idiot, because like, as being a part of that constituency, or just like a citizen, right? Odds are that you may not be on the winning side for real, so I just life is just so funny, man. maybe I'm just high as shit, but I hope y'all can understand what I'm saying. But moreover, on this male loneliness epidemic, you know, one thing I find to be particularly interesting is someone who makes manosphere content. When I make this content, first of all, you know, I try my hardest to never make it seem like I'm bashing women. That's never my intent. I really just like to highlight social issues and dynamics within some of the things that we see all the time, because this kind of media is around us like every fucking day, right? So why not give some sort of perspective on it? And, you know, throughout all that, you have my shorts at the very least, where, you know, sometimes just me reacting to some things that do come off as ridiculous. And, you know, I gotta be transparent and say that for the most part, I avidly do try to find some of these things that are a little bit more on the ridiculous side. Of course, you'll find real life examples, you know, embedded throughout all of these things. But for the most part, a lot of these may possibly be slightly exaggerated, at least from the perspective of the creator that I'm reacting on. Moreover, you know, I'll put my perspective on and post it, whatever. It'll get some comments. And for lack of a better word, you know, some of you guys y'all are bugging with some of the things you say, like the idea of, you know, removing women's rights or repealing the 19th. I mean, guys, come on. What are we doing? You know, it's strange to me how in one breath, because think about it, perspective is a bitch, right? And with perspective, there's always going to be two sides of what can be perceived to be the truth. And that comes down to the individuals that are, you know, analyzing said context. And within all that, regardless of what you have to say about how women feel about themselves, how they feel about themselves is how they feel about themselves, right? That's why I don't make content that's like trying to police women's behaviors or, you know, this, that, and the third, because that's a waste of fucking time. First of all, humans are so much capable of like doing the most random shit you can't necessarily predict. There is some behavioral traits here and there that are, you know, characteristics that all humans to some capacity, you know, have. But for the most part, humans are so unpredictable. Like, it's hard for me to even say, like, the way some of y'all come across, you know, the critique of some women, it doesn't even make sense. Like, could it be accurate for one or two, or for like anecdotal examples? Yes. Could one say like viral videos do have some leverage in regards to views? Yes. But then if you think about it from a mathematical standpoint, a fucking short that, you know, that's inherently bashing women, I'm not saying that it is or not, I'm just saying for context's sake, a video that's bashing women and proving said accusation to be true and has only like, I don't know, maybe like 30 million views, does not necessarily speak for even the 300 million in the United States, let alone the remaining, you know, I don't know, fucking 7,700,900,000 people on Earth. You dig what I'm saying? So like, I don't know, man. There's a lot of layers to this shit cake that we're all eating, and it doesn't quite make any sense anymore. It doesn't make sense anymore. You know, a lot of guys like literally hate women but love pussy. We could be fucking frank about that, but then in the same breath are mad about being lonely. Nigga, that pussy comes with a body. You know, I don't know what to tell you, but you're gonna have to talk to the brain too, at least to some capacity. Will you find the occasional bozo, whether that be male or female, you know, throughout life? Yeah, of course. Will you find people that are more so, you know, on the side of wanting something casual yet consensual and, you know, keeping it light as opposed to something that's, you know, as investment heavy as a relationship? Yes. But for those that avidly hate women, you know, are smashing and dashing, I've done my fair share of that as well, but, you know, for guys that are doing that, hating women, how in the same breath can you complain that you're lonely? That sounds like a personal problem if you ask me. I don't know. That's all I can say. Like, I gotta be frank with you. If you can't get laid in the era of sexual liberation, I feel like that says more about you than anything. You can be offended if you want. You know, some of y'all get offended regardless of what I say, so I guess you could take that to the chin if you want, or you can leave your grievances down below. If you're a first time watcher, you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button. But nah, man, I don't know. I just feel like some things are worth talking about. The last thing I want to talk about is America, and I don't want to talk about politics. I just want to talk about overall, like the mental health of America. And I want to start this off with the story. So I'm at the food mart, right? I'm buying food and shit, debating these prices on these tomatoes and shit, looking at the chicken thighs, you know, all that good stuff. And I'm walking through the aisle, and as I'm walking down the aisle and past the cart, as a side note, I'm fucking cold, so I'm gonna wrap this up. But as I'm walking through the aisle and shit, I see this woman who, not judging her, but she looks disheveled, like, you know, her clothes is all fucked up, and she's like everywhere with it, right? Like, she's not really, I gotta be honest, she's not really all there. Again, not really judging her, I'm just saying. And as I'm walking down the aisle, she looks at me and starts walking. She starts speed walking. And she's like, oh, I can't. And now me, as a brown man, right? Part of me wanted to almost take that as like a racial connotation, but I was thinking that was ridiculous, right? But I was like, wouldn't it be kind of ridiculous if she said that because of me? But that's crazy, right? But I gave it some more thought as I was, you know, unloading these groceries in my fridge. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, you know, for all I know, she could have been having a shit ass morning, tried to escape to the local mart to try and, you know, get away from whatever she was going through, and then, you know, figure some shit out on her own. And then she can't find the item, and then, I don't know, maybe she seen me and reminded her of somebody, and, you know, she started bugging out, or whatever the case may be. And I feel like that is a very small example of the reality that the United States as a microcosm, or I think as a collective, that's a better word to say, as a collective is going through. And I think America finds itself in a position where now its identity has been fractured in so many ways. There's only so many ways it could try and tape back these already shattered pieces back together. And I'm not saying anything is going to happen that's, you know, catastrophic in nature. To the very least, I'm not going to say anything that will get my channel put at risk. But what I would say is, history in some way, shape, or form tends to repeat itself in more ways than one. And when it does repeat itself, although it does have the foundation of the thing it's repeating, it comes in its own flavor, right? I don't know about y'all, but it definitely feels like things are changing. And with that being said, I think it would be in everyone's best interest to try and be as prepared as they can. I don't know why I'm doing this like fake Obama voice. I'm not trying to piss nobody off, by the way. If you're not a fan of the Grim Reaper. And this is how wicked it is. I can go on a fucking tangent about this too, because listen, from a social perspective, Obama was the guy, right? Socially, he looked great. Obama looked great on paper. I'm not saying, actually I'm gonna say what I say. Personally, I don't give a fuck if you're offended or not, but I'm gonna just say what I say. But if you look at his track record from a military perspective, the good old MIC, the military industrial complex. Also, side note, I really hope none of these niggas come try and snipe me. I just like going to the gym, getting this money, and, you know, doing my thing here and there. So please, I'm not, a side note, I'm not self-deletal, right? All right, I'm not self-deletal. I might have thought about it a couple times, like back in the day, but I'm not self-deletal. But you know, I'm just saying. But anyway, before I lose my train of thought, I'm low-key high right now. Shit, what was I saying? I'm also not editing this at all, but listen, Obama looked great socially, but militarily, bro was the fucking Grim Reaper. You know how many drone strikes this motherfucker had? Bro was playing Call of Duty in real life. No wonder why, when it was all said and done, he spent so much time with the military, you know, obviously honoring the dead, you know, shout out to them. And he, of course, that's the right thing to do, but I mean, bro was so in it. He was so in it, and this is how wicked it is, because the perspective is always skewed to the, I might say too much. I might say too much. Let me just end it there. Anyway, we got videos coming out Wednesday and Friday. I'm fucking cold, so I'm gonna get back inside. But yo, all I'm saying is, listen, as far as motivation, this is what I got for you. You gotta stay to some degree hopeful. Listen, if religion is your thing, then bro, hats off to you. If you like religion, man, good for you, right? Just please, just like stop going around preaching it to people, because it's really hard to convince someone that there is a benevolent God out there wanting the best for everyone. Meanwhile, across the ocean, are getting you-knowed in a myriad of ways. So like, and that's not even just them, because there's so many examples of that everywhere, and there's just so much, even in our very own country, there's so much, shit going on. One has to ask themselves, how in the fuck could you think that there is a benevolent God with all this shit going on? Isn't that strange? But anyway, that's all I'm gonna say. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, share this video with a homie, and let me know if you feel the same. I personally feel like America is going in a direction that none of us really want it to go in, but no one's really saying it, and I don't know, like, what is it gonna take for people to say it? But hey, that's all I'm thinking. You let me know your grievances. If you're a hater, fuck you, and that's about it. Peace.